How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 5000, and in this video, we're going to take a look at two disturbances that have the possibility of developing into a tropical cyclone. One of them could develop as strong as a Category 3 hurricane based on some of the latest computer model runs. Right now, the National Hurricane Center is giving this around a 30% chance of developing over the next 7 days. However, expect this chance to rise. It seems like all the most reliable computer models are very confident in this storm system eventually developing. So I do expect the National Hurricane Center to eventually update its forecast where the chance is higher to at the very least a moderate chance in the near future. So throughout Central America, up towards Nicaragua, Honduras, you definitely need to keep a close eye on this. And even as far north as Jamaica, if this were to take a track a little bit further northward, that would bring a little bit more impacts to you guys. And then in the more long-term future, you guys are also going to need to be aware of this. But I'll go into more detail in just a little bit. Taking a look at this disturbance, we do see it has a medium 40% chance of developing into a tropical storm, so right around moderate chance. However, the good news is that it's expecting to move out to sea, and it's expecting to be under very hostile conditions. So if this were to develop into a tropical storm, it'll likely be very weak. And taking a look at the water vapor energy, you could clearly see why this storm system doesn't have much of a chance to really strengthen much more than a tropical storm. It's dealing with a lot of dry air. Of course, you could probably tell the wind shear is quite strong because all the clouds are drifting towards the northeast due to a strong upper level flow that's pretty much dominating much of the United States and even off the coast. So it's definitely going to struggle. It might develop subtropical characteristics, which means that it won't be entirely tropical. It's definitely going to need some cold air to enhance the instability on the northwestern side. But whether this is subtropical or tropical or not, this will likely be a very weak storm, as it won't likely have very much of a future, which is certainly good news. But moving further southward to our next disturbance, which I believe is definitely far more of a concern, we do see that there's quite a bit of convective activity going on right around northern South America, extending into Central America as well, and even as far north as the Caribbean islands. Now, the big thing that this that will determine if this storm system develops or not is if it's able to develop an area where there's going to be a high amount of convergence in a very small area. I'll go into detail with that right now with the computer models. So here's what the latest run of the GFS model is stating, and taking a look at the Caribbean, we do see there's plenty of convective activity going on like we just saw in the water vapor energy. But if we were to continue to move forward, the convective activity is expected to enhance, and that's one of the things all the computer models are agreeing on. The convective activity will enhance. However, the GFS model is different in that it expects there to be a bit more convective activity and the convective activity to be a little bit less spread out, and that'll enhance tropical cyclone formation, because the more spread out energy is, the less energy there will be right along the center of circulation for the wind speed to increase and for the pressure to be low enough. Since there's only a limited amount of energy, if it's too spread out, then it limits the energy in one area for the wind speed to be as strong to be considered tropical storm status and for a low level center to develop. However, in the GFS model's case, it expects the convergence to be a lot stronger and the convective activity to develop right around one center of circulation, so it's receiving majority of the energy, unlike the other computer models where the energy is a bit too spread out to for the wind speed to be at its strongest. But moving forward with the forecast, it does become very concerning in the GFS model's case, because it does want to bring a major hurricane landfall right in between Nicaragua and Honduras, which would definitely be very concerning if this were to end up being the case. And this would happen right around November 5th on Sunday, so right around 6-7 days from now. So there's still definitely a lot of time to iron out the forecast. But continuing to move forward, we do see the GFS model still expects us to maintain major hurricane status as it makes landfall over Cuba and could potentially bring a major landfall right over southern Florida, as it's taking a very similar track to Hurricane Wilma. Of course, Hurricane Wilma took that turn northward a little bit further northward compared to this scenario we're seeing right here, where Wilma took a track to the northeast by the time it reached the latitude of Cancun, while in this scenario, it wouldn't turn northward. It would turn northward a little bit earlier, taking that northeastern track right between the border of Honduras and Nicaragua. But in terms of its formation as well as its trajectory, it's a very similar track where southern Florida will get involved as well as Central America. So there's definitely something we're gonna need to keep in mind. Taking a look at the European model, the European model is a lot less confident in tropical cyclone, or at least this storm to some into developing into a hurricane, because we do see in the European model's case it does expect a decent amount of convective activity, but it's a bit too spread out, and majority of the convection is going on right over South America. So this area is absorbing more energy, as well as this hurricane or tropical storm right here is absorbing a lot of the energy away from this area of convective activity for this to develop a low level center quickly, as the European model does it a lot more slowly. It eventually does expect this storm system to reach tropical storm status by the time it approaches Nicaragua, where we do see the millibar pressure hover around 1,005 millibars, but certainly a much better scenario than the GFS model's case, where the GFS model wants to take a major hurricane. So the key thing over the next 48 to 72 hours will be how much convective activity we're going to see over the Caribbean, and because that'll determine how quickly a low-level center develops. And if a low-level center develops quickly, then unfortunately we're likely to see rapid intensification, because if taking a look, just looking at the relative humidity, there isn't a lot of dry air that's expected to disrupt this area of convective activity as it heads further westward, and the wind shear isn't looking much better, where we do see the wind shear will be rather light as it's going to be under an upper level high. So if anything, we're going to see this upper level high enhance intensification, since it'll allow this area of convective activity a little bit more of an outflow to enhance more lift around the center circulation. So unfortunately, if we were to see a low level center develop, then it's very likely it'll develop pretty rapidly as it heads towards Central America. But the key thing is when, if we'll see a little bit more convective activity over a smaller area to where it's absorbing all the energy, then we're more likely to see that low level center develop earlier, and the GFS model likely becoming the more accurate scenario. While if the convective activity isn't strong enough to where a low level center could develop quickly, and a lot of the energy is very spread out as different areas, different tropical waves are trying to fight for the same limited amount of energy, then it's less likely we're going to see a low level center develop. And another thing too that I want to point out is taking a look at the soundings between the different levels of the atmosphere. We do see that the wind direction does shift quite a bit with height in the European model's case, but in the GFS model's case, right around the same time period, we do see you're going to see that the GFS model it does change a lot with height as well, but we do see that the wind shear is only going to expect to enhance the outflow in the GFS model scenario, as a stronger wind shear represents a stronger upper level high for more outflow to occur and more intensification. And by this point, it already developed a low level center, so this wind shear wouldn't necessarily be strong enough to inhibit this from developing or at least rapidly intensifying. So the key thing you're going to need to pay close attention to is how much, if we're going to see a little bit more convection than usual over the next few hours or a little bit less. And I think that'll be key in determining if we're going to see potentially a major hurricane or maybe nothing more than a tropical storm or even less than that. There's still a pretty large amount of uncertainty and a lot of days to go before this approaches the longitude of Central America. So Central America and even areas as far north as Jamaica and Cuba, extending into the Yucatan Peninsula, and heck, even maybe Florida would need to maybe pay attention to this in the more long-term future. So definitely at least keep this in mind, and way too early to panic. So I'll keep you guys updated and make sure to just stay tuned, as the certainty will certainly rise over the next few days. Another thing that definitely isn't very good news is that the sea surf temperatures over the Caribbean are much warmer than average for this time of the year. During this time of the year, we typically see temperatures cool down just slightly closer to the mid to low 80s, but we're still seeing sea surf temperatures that are hovering in the upper 80s over this area, which is definitely plenty of fuel for tropical cyclone development and to enhance overall lift in this area, which does have me very concerned that a low-level center could develop rapidly enough with this amount of latent heat that the ocean's giving off for a major powerful storm to impact one of the Caribbean islands or potentially Central America. That this will definitely certainly help the possibility of tropical cyclone development over this area, which is the reason why I do believe we have a moderate or potentially a higher chance of tropical storm formation right over this area, as the computer models also seem to be agreeing with this. And combined with the fact that we're seeing sea surf temperatures like this, it's definitely very concerning. In terms of the actual sea surf temperatures, we're talking about, look at the Caribbean. We're seeing sea surf temperatures hovering pretty much all throughout the Caribbean around 30 degrees Celsius, which is hovering around the upper 80s, which is plenty of fuel, like I said. And moving a little bit further northward, if this were to take a track further northward, the good news is that we're now beginning to see sea surf temperatures fall below 80 degrees just off the coast of Florida, as of course plenty of cold fronts have moved through, and it's definitely cooling down the sea surf temperatures in this area, so it wouldn't have as much fuel to work with. But for majority of the time, if this were to take a track towards Florida, it would be over sea surf temperatures above 80 degrees. So this small area where it's below 80 degrees won't make much of a difference if this were to take a track further northward, potentially into the Gulf or maybe into the Atlantic in the more long-term future. We're just going to need to wait and see. Now, a big question you probably have is the forecasted projected path of this storm system. So the GFS model eventually expects this storm to move further northward because a powerful mid-lat to low by the time we approach Sunday, November 5th, should move through the Midwest and allow an open area for this storm to move further northward and shift the wind direction from an easterly direction to more of a southwesterly direction to steer this to the northeast. And that's exactly what the GFS model expects. So the how powerful this trough will be and how far south it digs will be a key determinant in whether this takes a track further northward or maybe just fizzles out right over Central America. Taking a look at what the European model is forecasting. The European model, let me go to a more long-term forecast, so of Z-Run. Okay, so the European model, we see that it expects a lot more ridging just to the north of this storm, which isn't enough to really steer this storm further northward, where the troughing is very weak and just fizzles out over Central America. So definitely going to need to pay close attention to this trough that's expected to move through the Midwest by the this coming weekend, because that will be a key difference maker when it comes to the track of this storm. Here's a look at the GFS ensemble members, and we do see that plenty of them do want, pretty much majority of them want to take this storm system eventually northward, and it's concerning, especially for Cuba, because we have quite a few of them wanting to take a hurricane or potentially as strong as a major hurricane right over Cuba, which would definitely bring major impacts if this were to be the case. But again, it's still very far out in the future, so definitely pay close attention to any updates we see with the ensemble members, because the ensemble members could change very quickly, as you probably know, based on how this hurricane season has been. So definitely stay tuned for more updates, as I'll tell you guys when we'll see a little bit more when we could be certain with the forecast. So, although the main European model expects this storm system to take a track straight towards the west and fizzle out over Central America, there are some ensemble members still wanting to take a track further northward. So, the European model is at least acknowledging the possibility we could see this move further northward if the troughing ends up being strong enough. I'll certainly keep you guys updated if this were to be the case, because then that would be a pretty big that would be a pretty big concern for Cuba as well as Florida. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather related content, and I hope you guys all have a great day.